This is the Succeeding Small podcast, and we are on a mission to turn your entrepreneurial dream into a small business success story. We give you the strategies and insights from business owners and topic experts who are invested in your success. Leadership, operations, finance, marketing, growth. These are all topics we need to know as service-based businesses as we scale to the next level. Consider this your masterclass for small business success. Get ready for tactical business strategy and authentic conversations about scaling and entrepreneurship. We tackle it all to help you achieve your business's full potential. Ready to be challenged and inspired? Let's succeed small. Okay, welcome to the podcast, Justin. I'm so excited that you're here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited as well.
Yeah, so for our listeners, can you just introduce your company and kind of your story? What's your journey getting to this place?
Yeah, so my name is Justin. I own Incline Landscaping. I own half of it. My cousin who lives here locally owns the other half as well. And so we're going on our fourth year in business now. And prior to that, I was in the clothing industry, so a totally different industry, but I've been an entrepreneur now for going on about 12, 13 years. And I always say the first 8 to 9 years, I had a lot of failing and a lot of learning what not to do. And this time around, I feel like I finally got it right. And so, we here in Colorado Springs locally, we specialize in design and construction installs for residential and commercial properties here in Colorado Springs.
Nice. That's awesome. Funny enough, my first business was in the clothing industry. I started a
Nice.
clothing boutique. So I built my
Nice.
little website at 16 and set up at trade shows and craft fairs selling women's clothes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I remember those days.
yes, the hustle of being in the clothing industry.
Yeah. It's a tough industry.
Oh my gosh. Well, congratulations on all that you've been able to achieve. And I'm really excited to be able to talk to you. I'm very intentional about who I bring onto this podcast to
Yeah.
specifically have guests who have gone through scale and have who gone through those failures and those processes of learning, because that makes your now somebody's goal to work towards and being able to
Right.
take and learn from you and what you've done and be able to implement in their business today. So, talk to me about that kind of growth span. What have you learned in those 12, 13 years to be able to get you in a place where you are functioning as a company? You're successfully scaling. You told me the other day you're having a record year. So,
Yeah.
what have all of those experiences taught you today?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things, and I always focus on it a lot when I talk to people is the systems and processes. And so when I was first running my clothing businesses, we had no systems and processes and we're just kind of all over the place. And what I learned this time around is building out SOPs that not only can run the company for myself, but as we started to grow and have employees, that they can have a system that they can look at and not need to call me 100 times a day in order to get the questions or, hey, how do I do this again? It's anything that's at their fingertips. And so with Incline, we built out a system. I would like to say it's like the Google within Incline. So anything related to Incline, they can look it up at the source of their fingertips, basically on their phone. It's an app. They look it up and can have the question and the answer to anything literally within seconds and not need to call me and say, hey, how do I do this again? Or what was this process again? And so that's dramatically allowed us to scale and grow and be able to bring on employees.
Yeah, absolutely. Where did you first learn that? Because it takes businesses a while to be able to even know what SOPs mean and
Yeah.
much less how to actually create them.
Yeah. So actually, I learned it from a friend out here locally. So it first started from my wife, who works for a company out here in the salon industry. And so her and her boss partnered together, and they originally were going to franchise their business. And what they started doing, and they took all these, spent 40, 50,000 on franchising classes. And within that, they realized, hey, why don't we license the business and kind of build what's called like a business in a box? And so instead of Jimmy's landscaping having to buy, or Jimmy himself buying Incline Landscaping and running that franchise, he could still run Jimmy's landscaping, but buy all the systems and processes to successfully run that business. And so we kind of switched to a licensing program and building out all those systems and processes so everything can function within Incline so that one day somebody could buy it. That's the end goal, is to sell the program to other landscapers around the country so they can buy it, but trying to get everything perfect before we do that. But
Mhm.
that's where I got the idea, was a local salon owner out here.
That is so cool. That is such a high level skill that I wish that every business when they're starting could be able to learn and get that value because they do what they do day in and day out, do
Yeah.
the same things over and over again. And the minute they hire that first person, it becomes like, oh my gosh, how do I get what is inside my brain that has been so natural to me and ingrained in me out into somebody else's hands? And then that
Yeah.
ties you to your business even more than when you were just functioning as that solopreneur.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's one thing I learned as we were scaling and bringing on employees was you don't really realize how much yourself, in my case, how much Justin does day to day on these little tasks, or even as we grew with our managers, like how much they do in order to teach the employees. And so to your point, being able to take everything in our brain and put it onto a piece of paper so somebody can then look at that and you don't need to be there every day with them once they learn it and train on them.
Mhm. Yeah, so as you're kind of building this Google, this
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
ultimate source, what is your process for creating those SOPs? And then how do you teach other people to do the same?
Yeah. And so basically what I do is I'll replay the moments and go back through my head as if I am the employee, and I'll literally do the training myself. So I will say, okay, let's say we need to onboard a customer. And I'll physically write them down first. What is every step that we need to do? And then I'll go through and I'll practice as if somebody's training me, and I'll read back through that, whether it's a script or the step by step, and I'll do them and I'll see if there's steps missing. And then from there, once it feels pretty perfected, and then I usually do a couple test dummies not inside my company. So I'll actually grab a couple outside people and have them test it because I want to see, can somebody who's never a day in their life landscaped be able to read these processes and does it make sense to them? Or somebody who's never ran my CRM system, could they one day within an hour look at this, read it, and then do the task that I'm asking them to do? So I usually test it on those people first before I'll test it within somebody inside the company.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, I have interns in my company. We partner with universities and do an internship program. And so that's always my test is
Nice.
create the SOP as if you're giving it to an intern
Yeah,
because
exactly.
college interns need their hands held for
It
a
does.
lot of things. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
if you're able to write it at that very basic level of somebody who doesn't have that information, that is protecting you instead of building it with company jargon, with assuming knowledge, because you're going to hire that entry level person or that intern, or you will be on vacation and need somebody to
right.
be able to interpret it. And you can't rely on people having that assumption of knowledge to be able to
Yeah.
actually get the job done.
No, I
That
totally agree. I totally agree. And I think one thing for me is like, I'm definitely a student of the game. Like no matter if I'm watching like a movie or a show, like I'm always super interested in business, and even like a non-business show or movie, I'll try to pull the data out of it. So one of the things is even watching within the last couple of years, the movie, The Founder about McDonald's, that really helped me kind of implement a lot of this as well. Seeing that any corporation can really pull anybody off of the street. You don't need to have years of experience because you can go through their systems and processes. And within 2 to 4 weeks, you're pretty much fully trained on how that company wants you to do something. And so I kind of took a lot of those ideas and built them within Incline as well.
I love that. Yes. So I am curious. We're both service based businesses and our audience
Yeah.
is service based businesses. But how do SOPs differ when you have people actually on the field, actually carrying out their job duties and being at it? Because my people are behind a computer. So it's very
Yeah.
different. It's a very different work style. So how do you train your employees to depend on your SOPs to be able to like know where things are, to be able to go access them? How do you get people to actually utilize the systems that you've built?
Yeah, so we have a couple ways. So we do monthly meetings with all of our employees. And so that's where we'll do our check-in statuses with them, go over any questions that they have. It's part of their job as well to, as things pop up throughout the month, they're not urgent or emergencies that need to be handled right away. You can write them down for like, what do we in now? September. So your September questions, and then we would meet in October and kind of go over like anything basic that's not emergencies, as well as for all of our management staff and upper leaders, they have their SOPs are built into the app on their phone. And then, so it's anything you can read. There's links that you click and it opens up new tabs. As far as our in the field workers, they're a little bit separate. Most of the people that you meet work with their hands, they do construction. So they're more of like a hands-on learning and or video as opposed to reading. And so we'll create video SOPs for them, showing them, hey, step by step with video editing, this is how to build a retaining wall, step one, step two, so on and so forth. And then at the end of those videos, they take a test. And you must pass the test at an 80% rate in order to be in the field.
That is so awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
What kind of software do you use to like deliver the test, or is that something that you guys have created?
It's something we created actually. And so like everything is custom within Incline. So the test is created, even part of their orientation when you first get hired with Incline. One of the biggest things we heard is in the construction industry as we started doing more and more interviews was you kind of just get thrown out to the wolves. And so you've never done landscaping or you've done a year of it. You kind of have some rough experience. It's you and the owner working, but he's got to run and grab some parts or he's got to be gone for 3, 4 hours. He comes back and you're basically getting screamed at because he told you how to do something, but you don't know exactly how specifically that company does it or how he wants it done. And so with us, when you get hired, you go through a full orientation and same thing at the end of that orientation, you also get quizzed on, how well were you paying attention? Can you pick up on information? Even one thing we do to take it a step further is we give all of our employees a hard copy manual book, basically showing them how to install things in case you're not a video learner. So in our instance, if we ask you to dig a French drain, you can, and like, let's say you just forget you have a brain fart for a moment, you can run back to the car, the company truck, pull the manual out and say, oh yeah, this is how they dig a French drain, read the steps step by step, and then go back into the field 2 seconds later and kind of follow those instructions as opposed to calling me or calling the foreman to see how do I do this again.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you noticed an improvement in employee satisfaction and work job quality? What have been some of the benefits that you can say, like, this wouldn't have happened this way if I didn't have these systems in place?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the one thing I noticed right off the bat is prior to having the systems and processes, my phone would ring at least 20 times a day, multiple employees asking a ton of questions, as well as obviously customers calling in. But one of the biggest things we noticed right away is the amount of decrease in phone calls. And then you start getting nervous because you're like, is everything okay? You're not used to not getting calls. And so then when you call to check up, things are running smooth and they know what to do, as well as like the employee retention. And so like our foreman is going with us now for 4 years. He was actually one of our first hires. And one of his things we always talk about with him is he like his family even has told him that it's crazy that he stayed with us this long because he's never been at a job more than a year and a half. And he's going on 4 years here with Incline. And he's in his mid 40s. So he's definitely had multiple jobs. And he's just like, this is everything I've ever wanted in the company is growth, basically having a place where I know what to do at all times and I'm not being yelled at. And there's basically structure. And so we hear that throughout all of our employees is the structure that they have. And then even KPIs that we do our monthly one-to-ones on. That's a big satisfaction for a lot of our employees, which for me was a little different because at first I was a little nervous to do it, thinking employees might be a little frustrated or, oh, it's another monthly meeting. And it actually got to the opposite where sometimes if we're running a little bit behind, we'll have employees reaching out and saying, hey, when are we doing our one-to-ones? And that's been a really exciting thing for us.
That's so exciting. I love
Yeah,
that. Yeah, we do something called monthly alignment meetings. So we have regular check ins. Sometimes we'll move them to quarterly for people who have been here for a while. And then we do an annual performance review. And so we just have all of the touch bases, but it's so helpful to give people that space where
yeah,
it's okay to ask questions and you can get and give feedback and have that kind of reciprocal process. So that's
totally.
really, I love that you instill that in the relationship with your employees and give them that
Yeah,
space and breadth and be able to reinforce your systems that you've built.
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's been a super game changer for us.
Nice. So, talk to me about the implementation of systems as it relates to your growth strategy. How do you go about setting those goals and how do the systems be able to reinforce what you're going to do and allow you to grow and scale as your goals align with it?
Yeah. And so one of the things for us is we're growing as we onboard more sales reps, more project managers. And so part of their systems and processes is they have a resource page that kind of show them a breakdown of their KPIs. So they kind of know what they're being measured on. So it's not something where we go over it with them and we say, hey, this is what we're looking at you for in order to say, are you doing a good job or not? They have a source that they can always refer back to and say, how am I being measured this much? As how am I being measured this month? As well as if those things get updated, because some of the goals are different from winter to summer. And so a good example is like our sales reps, they have certain percentages they have to have on like their closing rate, their lead intake, stuff like that. And so they can refer back to it's kind of like a standard operating procedure for the estimator role. And so they can go under their resources tab for that and kind of look up, hey, what are the KPIs for this month? As well as did they get updated specifically for the month of September? That's been a huge factor for them in their role as far as growth because they know what to do that month, kind of what emphasis are that month. And so that's really allowed us to grow and give them some structure.
Nice. Yeah. Being able to have those benchmarks so that way they know what
Yeah.
they're going after. And then you have on the other side are able to hold them accountable to what they need to accomplish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, how do you like to learn? How did you get your business know how? Do you have any particular books or pieces of knowledge that you've been able to go and consume and would recommend to other people?
Yeah. And so for me, like, as we talked about earlier, like I love being a student of the game and will forever be a student of business. And so never had any business background as far as like college or school or anything along those lines. I did a ton of reading. I always say I had my master's degree from YouTube University. Ton of watching videos, ton of looking up to business leaders, people like Tom Bilyeu, Eric Thomas, Gary Vee. Then there's other specific ones in the landscaping industry, but as far as books, I think for me, one of the biggest things in the beginning, and it honestly has really nothing to do with business, but more mindset. And you always hear the cliche of it's about mindset, so on and so forth. But the Think and Grow Rich, that really changed a lot to do with my mindset and how I see the world and so many things beyond that. And then specifically through that, like the E-Myth, that was a huge one for me as well. Kind of realizing the difference between an entrepreneur, the technician within the business working on your business as opposed to in your business. But those type of books, I would say along like the mindset and specifically with business, like the E-Myth, were really helpful in my journey.
Nice. Yeah. So speaking of that E-Myth transition, a lot of
Yeah.
our audience is in that stage. They're in that
Yeah.
starting to scale stage. They really want to get out of the business and they're trying
Yeah.
really hard. Um, so what advice do you give to people in that stage to be able to truly put on that CEO hat, to be able to trust their team, develop the
Yeah.
systems, to be able to pass on them? What is your advice for those people?
Yeah, I would say honestly, taking the faith of lead, that was the biggest thing for me was the trust factor. And then honestly, kind of being scared. I think you hear the stigma with entrepreneurs that, at least in my case, they're super risk taker. They're crazy. And at least what I found, especially for myself, is I'm not necessarily a huge risk taker. I like to evaluate the data before I do. Now, obviously, there's some level of risk taking, but I think where I got caught up was I was always afraid to take the jump to be able to hire people. And so I would say actually taking the jump and knowing that you can always go back to doing the work yourself. It's not going to be the end of the world. I know it feels like your business is the end of the world and everybody in the world knows you and your business. But ultimately, if you make a mistake, most customers are pretty forgiving if you have some open communication. And then as well as the trust factor, this goes back to the building out the systems and processes. If you believe in yourself enough and you can build these out and train somebody up, that you typically won't be making a lot of mistakes because it's going to especially be coming from you in the beginning. You go from the owner to the person next in line, and it's not seven people down the line training this guy, and you're so far removed. And so I would say letting go of the trust factor, knowing that most people want to do good, they want to make you proud as their boss, and then taking the leap of faith and just jumping headfirst into hiring people and just removing yourself.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yeah, being
Yeah.
able to, if you are responsible for training that person and are
Right.
able to really trust in your systems, then you can have a little faith that they should
Yeah.
be able to carry it out. And also know that, like, that onboarding process and people learning your systems, there's going to be mistakes. It always,
Totally.
people are
Yeah.
human and they are new. And so, how do you create that kind of, how do you create the onboarding training experience? What kind of parameters do you put in place? How do you allow them to safely experiment or dive right in? What is your
Yeah.
process in that?
So we always give them a kind of a grace period, like 60 to 90 days. You're not necessarily allowed to make any mistake, but it's very vague on mistake making. We almost encourage you to make mistakes because we really want to lead from a place of empathy and not fear. And that's so different in the construction world where everybody's really tough, big manly guy. You get yelled at, you get cussed at by your boss. And it's just kind of the norm in the industry. Everybody's human, so they're going to make mistakes. And so we really lead with like encouraging you to make mistakes because we're never really putting you in a position where the mistake you make is going to be massive. Like we can kind of dictate it and control it as far as if you've never driven a skid loader, your first day, you're not going to be on a skid loader on a 45-degree steep hill because you technically probably could roll a skid loader over. So you get put into minor areas where the mistake you make is going to be supervised and you're totally allowed to make that mistake. So from a management role, putting your people in places, knowing and understanding that let's just pretend that they're going to make a mistake. Can you deal with the mistake they're going to make? And so we kind of put people in those roles where like we just pretend like let's just have them almost we encourage you to make the mistake, but it's not going to be drastic to the company. And then leading from empathy when they do make a mistake. And And we talk to all of our employees, especially during the interview process, on when you make a mistake, how do you want us to go about it? Are you the type of person where we can just talk to you right then and there in front of the whole crew? Would you prefer us to pull you to the side? So we actually talk to our people about when you make a mistake, how would you like us to address it? So it's not overwhelming and just our style. This is how we handle mistakes. It's more dictated to each person.
That's powerful. Being able to understand people and being able to see what drives them and what motivates them, and asking them directly how they like to be treated is a really
Right.
big next level move in your
Yeah,
relationship with your people and your ability to communicate to people. I
I
like
agree.
in your SOP documentation process how you have the multiple formats as well. You've got the video, you've got the hard copy, you've got the manual. Being able to really hit all of those different learning styles. That's something that we've been
Right.
able to think a lot about too, is everybody learns differently. Some people have to get their hands on it. Some people are auditory people. Some people have to be able to read it in front of them or feel it.
Right.
So being able to hit all of those different steps with your SOPs is like a fail-safe of
Definitely.
there's no way that you can miss this.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And it honestly kind of reminds me, even like to marketing is where I got the idea for this because same thing with marketing. You're not going to just put out a video. Like you can put out that video, then you can put out the written blog of it, you can put out the audio version of it. And so it's kind of a lot of things I think people overcomplicate. It's when you get into business, because these things you would think of in normal life, just communicating with another person, like, oh, maybe they learn a different way. But then the minute you get into business, you almost like get starstruck or you just get like set in your ways. And we try to apply just like normal life actions to our business as well and
nice.
keep it simplistic.
So speaking of marketing and being able to prepare for scale, being able to create those systems so that you can now have an influx of customers, you can onboard an influx of employees. Talk to me about how you go about that thought process, and what are some experiences in your business where you've seen those systems benefit growth and rapid growth at that?
Yeah. And so, like, as we've ramped up our marketing because we're able to take on more business, like, one of the things that really shocked me at first, and we just recently created this year, was systems and processes for our management staff. So, even creating the system and process that's not just, hey, this is how to do your job, but it's, hey, now that we're hiring somebody, here's what it looks like to actually onboard somebody. The first thing we do is, printing out all their W-2, W-4s, getting their shirt sizes. And then there's links on this is where we order our shirt from this company we use. So like even down to the minorest details like that has really changed things because what we started realizing was when we were hiring people or even our management staff was hiring people, they were then back to the same old where we started with square one. They're calling us and saying, what paperwork do I need? Where do I order the shirts from? So building out those systems and processes on the internal employee side. And then more so finding one of the biggest things for us was finding new CRMs to be able to allow us to basically intake all these new leads and keep them systematically organized. So then creating systems and processes for what we call like our lead specialists and how to manage, hey, these leads have been called, these leads have been left a voicemail, text, because not everything's linear. It's not as simple as, hey, these people reached out to Incline, we followed up with them, we're either doing a job or not. There's so many like they didn't answer, they only sent an email, they didn't fill out the form right. And so creating those type of systems as well for all the what we call like non-linear, it's not just straightforward, although it seems like it on the surface.
Yes, I think that's really fun when you realize
Yeah.
that you can actually systematize anything. What tech stack would you recommend to other service-based businesses? You were talking about CRMs being able to really
Mhm.
help people. So do you have any particular recommendations that you would give others?
Yeah. So like HubSpot has been really helpful for us. Even in the beginning when we were a little smaller, Jobber specifically for like the contractor world was really helpful. Landscape Management Network is specific to landscaping. That one's been really, really powerful for us as well. And those are kind of like the three that we really utilize a lot.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you. Can you talk about what your devotion of time is? When you were creating these documentation, these SOPs yourself, how much time did you spend on that, talking about working on the business instead of in it? What was your time then? And what is your time now in the role that you have today?
Yeah. And so I hear this a lot from a lot of entrepreneurs that they work 7 days a week, 12-hour days. And for me, like, I think that was me back in the day when I was failing and I was running companies that were not successful. I actually was working 7 days a week, 10, 12-hour days. What's been awesome and what's been weird, honestly, is the more successful I've gotten, because of these systems and processes, I don't have to work as much, although the business is 100 times bigger than anything I'd ever ran before. And so for me, I always think about it coming from a sports background, coming from a huge wrestling family, is kind of the off season for us is the winter. And so we'll kind of take all the data. We do a data dump at the end of every summer, well, at the end of every fall, really. And we'll go over what went really well that year, what can we improve on, and what were our opportunities. And that winter is when I get to work and I'll stay in the office and write SOPs pretty much all winter. I usually try to keep my schedule Monday through Friday. We have every weekend off. We give all of our employees the weekends off. But I honestly keep a pretty old school 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And in the winters when I really crank out a lot of SOPs. The summer with our businesses and trades, summer is go, go, go. It's 100 miles an hour. And so I really think of it of like a sports season. That winter is our off season. And that's where we kind of debrief and clean everything up and then get ready for the next season and create those new systems and processes.
Nice. I like that. Being able to use your natural seasonality to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And when you do take that rest time, the time to be able to reflect and build and restore, that makes your productive season that much better because you're not doing
Yeah.
things on the fly. You're not saying, like, oh my gosh, we have to onboard 3 people, but we don't have our onboarding SOPs.
Yeah.
And so, how being able to do that preparation ahead of time so that when it is go time, when it is time to play, you are ready to go. You don't have to think about how your systems are going to fail you. And instead, they just build that solid foundation so that you can continue to step up and grow.
Yeah. 100%. It's honestly like, I kind of think of it as a game and that's always kind of helped me. Like that's what the frame that I frame it in. It's really helped me say, like, I'm really looking forward to the upcoming year as we get busy and really running into those problems because it's always intriguing to me to see like, what didn't I think of this winter and then try to get back to it that next winter.
Yep, definitely. So, for my last question, it's a little bit untraditional,
Sure.
but can you be able to paint a picture of success? What does that end life goal look like after you've done this hard work? You've built those systems, you've done the work, you have successful seasons. What does that feel like for you? What does success mean to you? To be able to give people that hope of that is what is waiting on the end of all of this hard work. This is what I can feel. This is what I can be.
Yeah. So for me, it's really not necessarily a monetary standpoint. It's really time. And so I want to build a company that's successful so I can spend more time with my family as I'm growing a family and starting to have kids. Really want to success to me ultimately looks like building a company that's sustainable where I don't have to be involved every hour of every day, spending time with my family and then giving back. Those are really my two, if you want to call them whys for why I run the company and why I grow the company is being able to buy my time back and then giving back to people in need, not coming from a lot, not coming from a good standpoint as a kid and kind of growing up and breaking that poverty cycle. That's a huge thing to me is giving back to the community, especially where I'm raised. I was born and raised here in the Springs. So working with programs like we've done the last couple of years, we gave out turkeys during Thanksgiving to families in need. And so stuff like that to give back to the community and spend more time with my family.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me, Justin. This has been
Yeah.
my favorite guest episode. I love
Awesome.
getting into the business side of things and being able
Yeah.
to think about how your business can actually serve you in so many greater ways than
Right.
just entrepreneurship or just the dollar, anything like that. It can give you time, it can give you freedom, it can give your employees the lives that they want and the careers that fulfill them and
Yeah.
be able
Definitely.
to affect your community as well. So thank you for painting that biggest picture of
Yeah.
success. That is what I think we are all after and know that is possible. And I think systems and processes are step one of
They
being
are.
able to get people to that path.
It honestly, it's even what we were talking about earlier with BNI, like it's really allowed me to free my time up. And it's why I like finally can keep this scheduled BNI.
Nice. Yeah, I
So
love
yeah,
that. To be able to
definitely.
invest in something that continues to grow your business and grows yourself.
Right. Definitely. Yeah.
I love that. Awesome, Justin. Well, thank you so
Awesome.
much. Thanks for being a part
Yeah.
of the Succeeding Small podcast.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Hey, small businesses. As a thank you for tuning in, we're so excited to announce our monthly merchandise giveaway. Leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform, and you could win the merch of your choice. Whether it's a CEO hoodie, an entrepreneur mug, or anything else from our small business success collection, it's our way of saying thanks for your support. Simply leave a review, screenshot it, and email it to us at connect@succeedingsmall.co, and we'll announce the winner at the end of every month on social and in your inbox. In the meantime, check out our merch online at succeedingsmall.co/merch. That's MERCH. You just listened to another episode of the Succeeding Small podcast. I hope you had a pen to jot down all the actionable strategies we just shared. If not, no worries. We have every episode on our website, including transcripts, YouTube recordings, and plenty of small business resources. So visit the show notes and check out the incredible archive of content created for you and your scaling small business. We are truly invested in your success, and we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social to request topics you want to hear, or leave us a review wherever you listen. You're one step closer to being that small business success story.